Good evening. Come in, come in. Now don't be shy. There's plenty of room here at the Tail's End Tavern. I am the owner of this fine establishment. You may call me the Chronicler. Well, I am a chronicler. There are many of us. Some record and retell tales as old as time itself. Others, tales of what may yet come to pass. Some seek to record all knowledge, and others the end of all things. Myself, I look for those pieces that were left out of the stories others have told, or stories no one thought were worth remembering, but are nonetheless entertaining. We travel multiverses, time, and different realities all together, recording events and things we find of interest. Suffice it to say, if it has happened, or will happen, a chronicler has recorded it, and sent a copy of it to the Eternal Library. I opened this little establishment so that I might share some of those stories with you. Now, if you're looking for a way to pass the time, I can help you there. Oh yes. Come, pull up a chair by the fire, and listen as I tell you a story of mirth and mayhem. Now, this tale takes place within the game Starcraft, and is set before the well-known and bloody Brood Wars. I found myself deep in the Corpulu sector, on the colonial planet of Mar Sara, far from the Earth of that universe. Terran Marines had just finished fighting off the latest wave of a relentless foe called the Zerg. The things holding them together were faith and hope. Faith that they could hold out until help would arrive, and hope that the one answering their call would be on their side. Leading the desperate defenders was a young and unseasoned commander. Fresh from Confederate officer training, the man hadn't been on the planet long from my understanding. From what I'd managed to gather by eavesdropping, the man had helped another by the name of James Rayner. They burnt down some infected Confederate installation, much to their superior's ire. How he hadn't been jailed along with the marshal was beyond me. Oh, there were theories aplenty, I assure you. Bribery, connections in higher places. A few people even whispered tales of betrayal. Though the majority of people agreed the young commander and the marshal had done what was necessary. And I agreed. From what I knew of them, the Zerg were not a foe to take lightly. Even the smallest of their kind were capable of rending the heaviest of armor to ribbons, with the deadliest of them able to decimate whole squads of Marines. With the latest attacks thwarted, the man made his way to the command center, a large, mostly spherical building, devoid of any form of creativity. It fit in well with the other bland and uninspired pieces of architecture, which hadn't surprised me. The Confederacy had always been more concerned with control than expression. The inside wasn't much better. Rusted steel, flickering tube lights, and grime were only the beginning. Most of the inside metal panels had been removed, leaving the framework exposed from which wires and cables of varying thicknesses had been hung. The floor had large stains from where blood had pooled and been forgotten. Altogether, a rather dismal sight. I could only imagine the smell that the place must have contained. As for incorporeal as I was, I had no sense of smell at the time, but I clearly remember thinking how the air must have been heavy with the smell of stagnation and iron. Several choice swear words drew my attention to a small computer console, its eerie glow illuminating the tiny alcove and the two people who stood beside it. One was the commander, the other a serviceman of some kind who was missing an arm. His other was frantically turning dials and touching symbols on the screen. He stopped and stared at the commander and nodded. The commander raised a small black device that was connected to the machine the man was operating and spoke. "This is Colony 0304, Mar Sara, requesting immediate assistance from any available personnel. We are under attack. I repeat, we are under attack and need immediate assistance. Any forces, please respond." Silence followed, and the commander repeated his message, only to have it followed by more. He went to repeat his message for a third time, only to be interrupted by the base's alarm and the sound of Marines shouting. Without missing a beat, the young man had dropped the communication device and picked up his Gauss rifle, checked his magazine, and rushed outside to join the defense. Now there was a man worth following. Young as he may be, I'd have followed him. By now his men knew the drill. Pile in the bunkers, or get to the upper level and let the lead fly. As soon as he made it to the upper level, his rifle was firing, joining the orchestra of deafening firepower. But it wasn't enough to stop the swarm. Zerglings rushed in and died by the handfuls, absorbing the brunt of the fire as deadly hydralisks moved into range. One by one, defenders fell. Only the commander's steely resolve and courage kept them fighting. He leapt from his position on the upper level. The action was so sudden it took his men and myself completely by surprise. Was he insane, I thought? He opened fire on the hydralisks, his shot finding their mark. With the enemy's attention firmly on him, the commander made his retreat, drawing a large number of the smaller Zerglings and several of the Hydras with him. I was torn. Did I stay to see how the men would fare, or follow the commander to witness his grisly end? The explosions and the following cheers from the men would make that decision for me. As they were picking off Zerglings, the remaining Hydralisks, and dragging away the wounded, I ran to the commander's location, arriving in time to see him come out of the haze of dust and debris coughing. Once the smoke settled, I could see the carnage. By the Lord of Time, what had happened? I said it aloud for no one to hear. There were pieces of Zerg everywhere. The nearby walls, road, and commander were covered in viscera, not to mention the dozen or so craters. This being one of my earlier adventures, I was to say the least stunned. I had seen destruction before, but not yet on that level. It was unnerving how quickly those creatures had been reduced to smears upon the pavement. I'd played this game, this reality was based on many times before, so I knew without doubt this was the work of spider mines. Nasty pieces of work they are. The damage around me was proof enough of that. Then the commander walks through me, oblivious to my presence. This snapped me from my stupor, and I once more moved to catch up with him. He was heading back to the command center. I reached his side as he was about halfway across the compound. The civilians cheered and thanked him. For his actions, he had brought them time. More time to repair bunkers and load magazines. Time for help to arrive. And arrive it would. The next time the commander sent out his plea for help, he was answered by a familiar voice, the voice of Marshal Rayner. The Marshal had been freed from his stay on death row by the Sons of Korhal. How should I put this? They're a special interest group with access to military-grade equipment. It's not funded by the military. Now, how they got him out, well, that's a story for another day. What's important is that the Sons of Korhal were on their way to evacuate everyone. Just 30 more minutes. That's all they had to last. Just 30 more minutes. But could they? Resources and manpower were limited, and their foes seemed infinite. Only time would tell. Now, my friends, this is where our story ends this evening. If you've played the game, then you know how it goes. And if you haven't, and would like to know, I would highly recommend picking up the original Starcraft, the game this tale takes place in, and its expansion, Brood Wars. Happy travels, my friends, and good night. Hey there. If you've made it this far, I just want to say a couple of thank yous. First of all, to you, the person listening. Thanks for sticking around to the end, even though I know I made some mistakes along the way, which I hope you'll forgive. It's my first video, and I hope to get better as I make more, which there are more coming. Stories from Final Fantasy, stories from Warhammer, stories from Dungeons & Dragons. All of them original from my own mind, along with the artwork that comes with these. Next, I'd like to thank the people at the From Here to There writers group on Facebook. A couple of ladies in particular who helped me a great deal with my punctuation and some spelling mistakes. I'd also like to say a thank you to some of the people over at NightCafe, an AI generating platform, where all my images came from for this video. Now, if you wouldn't mind, hit the like button and possibly that subscribe. And if it wouldn't be too much trouble, leave me a comment as well. Let me know what you thought. Happy travels, my friends. Good night.